Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Friday Ramblings. I'm here. You're here. Let us ramble. Many moons ago, we talked about the original animated Transformers movie that came out in the 80s. Now, what a lot of people may not know on the surface of that movie is that it was produced alongside another Hasbro property that had a cartoon series that ran in the 80s, and that was G.I. Joe. Thus, as Transformers the movie was leaving theaters, G.I. Joe the movie came into theaters. They actually were being scripted and produced at the same time by different groups. This is important for later. Remember this. That's why they had such a close release date to each other. Now, similar to how the Transformers movie served as kind of a transition point between seasons 2 and 3 of the animated series and introduced a slew of new characters that were part of the next wave of toys, G.I. Joe served as a sequel and ultimately send-off to the original Sunbow Productions G.I. Joe cartoon, which would be followed up a couple years later after the movie by the Dick Productions, that is DIC. Let's not be weird and snickering about this, folks. But the Dick Productions cartoon that would follow up, featuring an altered cast, some of which were introduced in the G.I. Joe movie. As again, a lot of the new characters featured in the movie were part of the new wave of toys. That was the thing with the 80s cartoons. Almost all of them were designed to sell toys, hence Hasbro being name dropped earlier. And we're not completely immune to this now. After all, there is My Little Pony out there, and the fact there's still so many Transformers cartoons. So many Transformers cartoons. I may need an extra long episode to count down all of them, especially if you get into Japanese exclusives, but we're getting sidebar tracked. G.I. Joe the movie was released to theaters, of course, because it is a theatrical movie, in 1987, and was produced by Sunbow Productions and Marvel Productions, being animated in Japan by Toei Animation Company Limited, much like the series that it was serving as a sequel to. See? Of course, this was suffering from various production delays. Technically, it was scheduled to come out before the Transformers feature. And due to the poor box office performances of it and My Little Pony, the movie, which came out in '86, G.I. Joe the movie was seen almost exclusively by everybody on home video, as if it had any theatrical release at all, it was extremely short. It is most notably for being a direct-to-video release before airing on television, first in feature-length format, later split into a 5-part miniseries format as part of the TV show's syndication package. This is also part of why, in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of Hasbro stuff started disappearing from TV. So let's set the stage with the plot. Starts off in Cobra headquarters as Cobra Commander and Serpentor blame each other's leadership of Cobra as the root cause of the organization's various failures. Ultimately, their headquarters would be infiltrated by a mysterious hooded cloaked figure who would, upon getting face to face with Serpentor, reveal herself as Pythona, a woman with some reptilian appearance to her, although still a good little top knot and a ponytail lock of hair there, so somewhat humanoid as well. Claiming that she comes from a place called Cobra Law and that it is responsible for inspiring Dr. Mindbender to create the genetically to create Serpentor, who was an artificial being For those of you who are not familiar with G.I. Joe mythos, Serpentor was a mix of the DNA of various historical tyrants and military leaders throughout history. She urges Serpentor to then capture G.I. Joe's latest weapon, the Broadcast Energy Transmitter, aka the BET. Thus, Cobra assaults the Joes as they test the BET in the Himalayas. Serpentor is captured. Cobra Commander orders a retreat, leading them to the nearby Cobra Law, revealing that he knew of the group's existence all along. As the Joes take Serpentor and the BET into custody, a new group of rookie Joes, referred to as occasionally as the Rawhides, which includes the bad luck cursed ninja Jinx, military police officer Law and his dog Order, former basketball player Big Lob, EOD specialist Tunnel Rat, EOD of course also being Explosive Ordnance Disposal, aka Bomb Squad, undercover officer Chuckles, and Duke's half-brother Lieutenant Falcon, a Green Beret. We get to see their attempts to be properly trained by Beachhead, long-standing G.I. Joe member. Ultimately, inside Cobra Law, the Joe forces that try to chase them down are ambushed and detained, finding a very odd environment as Cobra Law seems to be based on organic technology and a lot of bugs and squirmy tentacle things. Cobra soldiers are then met by the civilization's leaders Galobulus, along with Pythona and Nemesis Enforcer. They also admit they know Cobra Commander, but declare that he has betrayed Cobra Law and take him into custody, eventually setting him up for trial, where they reveal that Cobra Commander was a citizen of Cobra Law that was disfigured after creating a gas-based biological weapon, then sent out into humanity to create an army that would help soften them up for Cobra Law to conquest them. Cobra Law also revealing their civilization is as old as humanity itself and has been remaining in hiding in the Himalayas. This whole disfigurement is the explanation for Cobra's classic no-face appearance. Now, this is an origin unique to the G.I. Joe movie. No hints of this had been shown in the existing cartoon. Cobra Law itself was created for the movie, although subsequent comics released in the 90s by various independent publishers would introduce variants of Cobra Law and their top-ranking people. In the comics, Cobra Commander was a full human, and although his face is never distinctly shown, similar to Victor Von Doom, there is no hints of massive disfigurement. Simply a matter of Cobra Commander wanting to keep his identity and personal life completely separate, as well as being kind of intimidating, because there's something a little unnerving about following somebody that has no face. As far as the movie's plot go, Zorana of the Dreadnoks is sent under disguise to seduce Falcon so she can get the information she needs to create a prison break for Serpentor and hopefully recapture the BET. After shirking training with the rest of the Rawhides, Falcon's put on guard duty by Duke, who is also chews him out for showing around the disguised Zorana and attempts to get romantical with her. Final straw is when Falcon abandons his post to flirt with Jinx, allowing the rest of the Dreadnoks and Nemesis Enforcer from Cobra Law to free Serpentor, injuring Joe veterans Alpine Bazooka and Gunho in the process. G.I. Joe leader General Hawk scolds Falcon, eventually leading him to a trial where he may, in fact, get court-martialed and kicked out of the Joes. Convinced by Duke to spare Falcon from going that far, Hawk reassigns Falcon to the slaughterhouse, where he's to be trained by Sergeant Slaughter and his renegades. This being ex-Viper Mercer, former football player Red Dog, and former acrobat the Russian Taurus. This group would then subsequently break into the Terror Dome, where Slaughter, despite his extremely harsh training methods and gruff manner of speaking to people, proves that he represents the best of all military values when he risks his own life to ensure Falcon and the rest of his team escape, quoting, "Either we all go home or nobody goes home." Unfortunately, while this minor victory goes on, this breaking into the Terror Dome allowing Slaughter to, and thus the rest of G.I. Joe, to figure out Cobra's plans, as well as blow up one of their minor headquarters. Cobra and Cobra Law still have the BET and Serpentor. The BET is thus revealed to be part of Globulus's plans to cause spores to not only, similar to the one that disfigured Cobra, to launch into space, but the BET will make sure that they mature and hatch, spreading the gas, disfiguring gas across the world, destroying humanity. It should be noted that Cobra Commander, after standing trial in Cobra Law, was exposed to a second dose of the gas in a much more concentrated form, causing him to slowly revert into a literal cobra, although much bigger than most cobras get, like full human size. As his intelligence waned, Cobra Commander would, while assisting the Joes who had been earlier captured, to escape, bemoaning over and over again, "I was once a man." I can't quite do the hissing. I'm not as good a VA as the ones hired for this movie. Massive fight happens, world is saved. Again, not going to go into super details. I did leave out one important plot point, though, because this is part of the fun and games. Remember I said G.I. Joe was originally slated to be released before Transformers, but because of production delays, got released after? Well, here is one of the most infamous trivia, fact, urban legends that is verified about G.I. Joe the movie. About towards the end of Act 2, as Serpentor is being released from G.I. Joe imprisonment, he gets in a fight with Falcon, and in trying to kill Falcon, he instead critically injures Duke. Here's where it gets fun. In the original script, Duke was killed. This is how it was animated, this is how the script was written, and this is how the dialogue was initially recorded. Unfortunately, because Transformers was released first, we got to see the fallout of Optimus Prime being killed in that movie. Specifically, that the fan base hated it, children, in fact, crying in the theaters, causing parents to be quite upset at this in very real consequences to war being portrayed. Now, yes, several other Transformers were killed in the movie, but Optimus Prime was the only one given the full dramatic final speech deathbed scene. And the fact he was the leader of the Transformers, much like Duke was field leader, General Hawk usually staying in the office unless there is a full all-on-out brawl taking place, there was a lot of obvious parallels. Hasbro, realizing that if they pull this twice so close together on their two biggest properties, they can pretty much kiss any of their cartoon profits goodbye, as this would be a double dose of bad PR. and a "wow, you really don't understand the effect your shows have on your child fan base" kind of smear. Last minute dubbing and re-recording of dialogue was done as Duke is being tended to. They take advantage of a point where long-standing Joe Scarlet is holding Duke while the docs work on him. Fortunately, the camera pans off her just enough, that you can't see her lips, when the added dialogue of "Duke's in a coma" is recorded, and the subsequent scene showing Duke's funeral right before the final battle in Cobra Law was cut from the film. Also, right as the ending credits are about to scroll, and you see a big pan away again, where you can't see anybody's lips to see who isn't talking, it is declared that word went out over the radio: Duke has awoken from his coma and will be okay. Thus, the movie is a little undermined on the drama front, and a little extra happy ending is tacked on. The production crew has, over the years, laughed about this. One of the senior staff in particular being quoted as, "Look, if you just ignore the soundtrack and look at the visuals, people, it is pretty clear that Duke was dead." Again, you didn't see any scenes of him in the hospital. It's just audio of them saying, "No, it's okay. Duke's out of his coma. Duke's 100% okay. You can be happy now, children." It's a thing. Now, as I said, subsequently the show would be picked up by a different production studio, Dick, however you want to pronounce it. And there would be multiple seasons done, some plot points being picked up, specifically Cobra Commander being stuck as a giant snake was resolved in one of the early story arcs as a way to lead into his new figure with a more battle armor based costume for him, as well as some of the new characters introduced, although Cobra Law would not reappear in any major way in the subsequent cartoon. It was, look, they lost. Their big named members were pretty violently beaten down, and depending on how you want to interpret some of the scenes, most of them killed. So there you go. However, as I said, the legacy of Cobra Law would live on. Various memes, especially the "Cobra la 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 la" battle cry, as well as new versions of them appearing in various subsequent comics released in the 90s and 2000s. Where do we stand on this? Well, both versions of the G.I. Joe cartoon series are somewhat camp, due to the nature that it was trying to adapt stories of the military and military conflicts into a 80s child-friendly environment. The fact that alongside this, it was also somewhat controlled plot-wise by Hasbro, and as far as they were concerned, the only purpose of the TV show being to sell toys. Again, the show was camp. There was some good written episodes, some nice character development with the more reoccurring members of the Joes, but especially looking at it now by modern standards of what an ongoing TV show is, even ones aimed at children audiences, it has not aged as well as some of the stuff that came out in the 80s. But if you go into it accepting that it's going to be a little cheesy, that it's going to be a little eye-rolling at some of the cliches, the shows are fun. The movie, honestly, script-wise, it's better than a lot of the episodes of the shows. Maybe it's the fact that they had, outside of the few miniseries that would launch individual seasons, more time to work with in developing the story. Maybe it's them having fun with the new characters and not have to worry about, relying on too much established personality and continuity for them. But, as far as things go, it's a good movie. It's not quite as good as the Transformers one. That one gets a little bit more over in my estimation, mostly because of the excellent work in establishing Ultron as a genuinely frightening villain, whereas Globulus comes off, much like most of Cobra Law, as kind of watered down Lovecraft. It's like Fisher-Price Lovecraft. Sorry, guys. Transformers movie edges just a little bit more. However, the classic cartoon, Sunbow cartoon, is available on multiple streaming platforms. So if you watch it and you enjoy it and you want just a little bit more of that kind of good stuff, by all means, watch the movie. It is a great epilogue to the Sunbow era, and as I said, serves as a good lead into what the subsequent Dick series would do. Still, it's not the best G.I. Joe content in the world. The G.I. Joe Marvel Comics, which we have already discussed in a video, check that one out in the archives, is to this day still the best use of the G.I. Joe Real American Hero license. But that doesn't make it bad. Not being the best doesn't make it bad. And that's a lesson I think a lot of people need to remember these days. People talk about, rate my stuff 5 out of 5 stars. Give me a score of 10 out of 10. If it doesn't have a 100% satisfaction rate, it's not a Etsy store worth going to. You know what? You don't have to do that. Something can be a little flawed in its writing here and there, and still be a great time to sit there and enjoy. Not everything has to be perfect to be worth investing in. So, go forth. Watch the movie. Honestly, you can, as long as you understand the base concept of G.I. Joe, you don't even have to understand too much of that, because the opening scene, the movie starts with a extended variant of the cartoon theme song that pretty much sums up the whole concept anyway. As long as you know G.I. Joe's just child-friendly military stuff, you don't actually need much context from the previous show to enjoy it. Everything's right there for you. So check it out. It is available on a couple different streaming platforms. Enjoy it. Consider it a good little training wheel start to some of the more serious, in-depth G.I. Joe stuff. No matter what, I take pride in the fact that I'm going to be here in another 7 days to give you another rambling. I'm not going to do a Cobra Law salute. I don't have any creepy bug-based technology. But just like Globulus had pride in his civilization, we take pride in giving you some of the best breakdowns of all things entertainment here at Roulette Productions. I'm not going to take over the world. I'm not going to physically disfigure you. Frankly, some people probably wish I was wearing a no-face mask. Be sure to like, subscribe, notify, leave comments, and ultimately just call me a dork if you want to. It ain't gonna hurt my feelings too much, folks. I'm not that easily offended. Because I just appreciate you watching. That's why I want you to stay happy, healthy, and come back in 7. Bye-bye.